you had sent me the news that supposedly Trump had sent in the military to open the water in California. And it made social media go nuts.
Okay, wait,
And
I have to
all
say, going back to the Bible, that post literally made me think of the whole like Moses when the Israelites needed water and he like
mhm,
took his staff and like hit the rock or whatever and like
water split out.
I was and I just wanted to say real quick, I'm not comparing Trump to Moses, but that's just the thought that entered my head when I read this Truth Social post. So
Yeah, and this might be the benefit of sometimes a lot of people rush to social media because they want to get a story out. And I've been guilty of it too. There's been a couple stories I'm sure I've put out that I thought were real, and then later they, 5 minutes later they were debunked. But I've learned from those instances and been like, you know what? Give it a second or trust your sources. People will be like, well, don't you trust Trump? And it's like, hmm, I think maybe he embellished a little bit. I don't know why he said that he did
a
send the
lot.
military. Huge. Believe me, we said it in the military. It was huge. It was an invasion like you never seen before. We invaded the water. Um, he does embellish a little bit. I don't know why he said the military showed up. Military didn't show up. There's no reports that the military showed
Open
up.
the post. Sorry, because I interrupted you right when you were about to. So read. Do you have it in front of you?
Do I have his post in front of
Yeah.
me? I could get his post in front of me. Do you want me to read his
Yes,
post?
I do want you to read his post
Okay.
so that we have full context of what we're talking about.
Okay. This is from Donald Trump on Real or True Social. He said, the United States military just entered the great state of California and, under emergency powers, turned on the water flowing abundantly from Pacific Northwest and beyond. The days of putting fake environmental argument over the people are over. Enjoy the water, California! Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation point. And that was his whole post. Again, I don't know why he said the United States military just entered the great state of California. There were some people who were like, this is Trump crossing the Rubicon. This is it. This is him declaring that he's not taking it anymore.
Some people will say this is a lie because California is not great.
Uh, yeah, but
Sorry.
people. So here's my rationale, and again, I'm going to get pushback on this, but you know what? If there's nothing else you can learn from this show is that we are not rah-rah cheerleaders for one side or the other. This is why we call a show like Equal Opportunity Political Commentator. We talk about both sides. I don't like this, and this did not sit well with me. I know people were cheering this on, and they were like, "This is amazing. We love that Trump is doing this." And then I said, like, look, there's no reporting of this. And people were like, well, how do you know there's no reporting of this? Like, what if they're covering this up because it's such a great win? And I'm like, if this happened, like, if this really happened and Trump sent in the military to open water in California, like just turn on the spigot, it would be wall to wall coverage on every news station in the world
Absolutely.
because it would be so outlandish and crazy for him to do such a thing that people would just be screaming from the rooftops all day long about how Trump has really become a dictator. He's now using the military to do whatever he wants and trample on states' rights. And don't you think Gavin Newsom would be out there at a podium or something screaming about Trump is invading states' rights and this is our jurisdiction, this is our right to water? Like, this would have been wall to wall coverage of Trump being a dictator all day long.
Trump's
Did
wall.
you
Trump's wall
Trump's
to wall coverage.
Trump's wall to wall coverage? And you didn't hear anything. There was nothing. Like, I watched the news today, nothing. There was some talk about, I guess, federal funds and Medicaid and stuff like that got shut off. Um, but this there was no talk about this. So that's how I know it didn't happen for sure, because if it did happen, they would have been reporting on it all the time. But my post that I wrote was, this is the problem when you worry more about who's in the White House and not in your state house. Trump is not king. I'm sorry. Trump is not king. You did not elect him to be a king. You don't want him to be Julius Caesar and take over as emperor of the United States. And I don't like this argument. And there are some people who will push back and say, that's a weak argument, bro. Like you can't say that argument. I don't like when your guy gets into office and greatly expands executive power, because 10 times out of 10, the next person who comes in, if they're not on your team, guess what? They're going to use that executive power. And it just becomes an arms race of like, who's using executive power more? Like, who can stretch executive power more and more to the brink? So I'm not a fan of this. And again, like, Trump can't solve everything in California. I know a lot of people think he can. I know they think he can come here and do a lot of things.
Everyone tags him on our post on Instagram, like, Trump, go fix this. They said this, therefore go fix it.
Yeah, Trump's going to fix it. Trump's going to fix this. He's going to get, they're going to look into this. I'm like, okay, but there's only so much the federal government and the executive branch can do regarding California. And it's a short-sighted look of how to fix California. In the sense of like having Trump try and do all this stuff, which he probably legally can or cannot do, like sending military in to turn on water, which I don't think he has legal authority to even
Well, can
do.
we talk about? Well, you can get your or finish your point, but can we talk about what actually happened with the water?
Yeah, I was just going to finish my point, which is what he can or cannot do is only going to be for the next 4 years.
Correct.
To fix California, we're going to have to really buckle down and actually focus on local elections and focus on those who are in Sacramento and focus on those who are in city. And I know we harp on this all the time, but it is so damn important. Otherwise, there's not going to be a President King who's going to come in here and fix California
Right.
willy nilly. And it's
We
kind of like his
federal
whole thing.
elections.
His whole thing where he came out and said, "Well, I'll give you federal aid for the wildfires, but you have to pass voter ID." And I'm like, that's just like not even a non-starter. Like, Gavin can't do that with a stroke of a pen. Like, he can't just make voter ID happen. Like, it has to go through the legislature. But anyway, that's my rant. And yeah, say no to King Trump
So
and to all kings.
you raise very valid points, and I do agree with you. I
Hmm.
did post that post last night on Instagram. I sent it to you on text. I sent it to my family chat, which, like, being my parents and my sisters, we have our text message, and I sent it to them. And I waited. I don't even know exactly how long, but I waited a bit because I kept going to X, I kept going to other news sites to see, like, where is this being covered. But then I still shared it, and I shared my opinion of, like, I I forget exactly what I said because I ended up deleting it, and I'll explain that too. But I was just like, I know that this is going to be challenged because this is when I was believing this actually happened. So I'm like, I know this will be challenged and people will say Trump doesn't have the right to this, but I have been saying for years, I wish someone would come in and literally physically overthrow Newsom because he's, gotten so out of control. And so, and I have said that for years. I'm like, where are the actual men that just go and like pick Newsom up and be like, you don't live here anymore, like, and I know that that's wrong too because people voted for him and all that, but and now I know that I'm going to get pushback for this because it's going to be like, the election was stolen. Whatever, that's neither here nor there. Then, of course, it wasn't long after that I found out it wasn't true. And so then I went and wrote a correction. I'm like, this is a lie. I don't even know why he said this because it's so far out there from the truth that, like, and I don't know that I think that Trump just sat down and made up a story, but was he fed just like, was he confused, fed wrong information? I don't even know what happened, but I was just like, this is a lie. And Trump and Truth Social, whoever posts for him, his administration should be held accountable for this because,
Hmm.
this happened. And I ended up deleting my prior story, not because I was ashamed that I said something wrong, because when I say something wrong, I do try to go back and like correct, be like, hey, I was wrong. This is wrong information. But people, might read the story and then not read the next story and kind of like, then they go with it, they repost it before the next one. And so I just didn't want to be responsible for more sharing of this completely, that's not even like misinformation. It was just story. It was a fairy tale. So I ended up
Mhm.
deleting that post, um, that story because of that. So in case anyone who follows me, because a lot of people did respond like to the story, oh my gosh, like this is crazy, but good for him for coming and doing this because it was necessary, stuff like that. Then when I shared the correction, I was like, this is a lie and Trump needs to be held accountable for it. I did get like people are like, wow, why? What? But I did get a lot of like, no, it's California. They're the liars. Newsom lied. The so and so. I don't trust these departments. They lied. They lied. My response was like, don't you think if this actually happened, the media would be all over this? Like this would be the
Mhm.
biggest story. I mean, on the ground reporters, helicopters flying above to see all the things. And Newsom would be there with his slick back hair at 4 a.m., like on this, and like you said, nobody, not a peep
Nope.
anywhere. And so, um, yeah, that didn't happen. And I do think that people should be like, not that this is the most pressing thing in America, but I think that we should be holding Trump accountable to this, because if this continues, what a disaster to have all these random stories of things that never happened. And that would be a big story, a huge story,
Yeah.
you know? So,
Yeah. I completely agree. It's sloppy on his part to put something like that out that is so fantastical. Um, Again, I agree with you. I don't know why he put that out. I don't know why he said he sent in the military to open the water and enjoy California. It just like, so what happened was this water pump came back online after maintenance. So then it started pumping water again.
yes.
That's why it happened. So that was the true story. The true story is that it was under maintenance and the maintenance was done and they brought it back and they like put it back online. So that's why the water started again.
And I believe it was
Uh,
a federal pump and it was down for 3 days.
yeah.
And
So it
And I
wasn't.
almost wonder if they
Go ahead.
didn't advertise it. Well, because right now, everyone, the big thing in California, obviously back to the fires that we've been talking about for weeks. And there's this big thing of why wasn't there water in the hydrants? Why was the reservoir empty? Why haven't we captured water? And so I could see why they wouldn't want to make this huge ordeal out of like, hey, we're shutting down this pump for like, maybe they didn't even know how long, but like we have to do maintenance on it. And maybe that was even scheduled maintenance. Like for all we know, this is like an annual thing or biannual thing or whatever. It was scheduled and they just like turned it off, fixed it, like as they do. And then they turn it back on quietly. But somehow, somewhere, this story was picked up as if it was something dramatic, and it wasn't. And I could see how they wouldn't want to make it like, hey, we're shutting down this pump, because then I would be like, oh my god, another, you guys are responsible for this. So they just kind of quietly like went in and we're like, all right, we're gonna do our maintenance, it's done, turn it back on. And all of a sudden the troops have been sent in, like, oh my, okay.
Yeah. It's a bad commentary on how sensational social media can get because people picked up the story and ran with it. It's a bad commentary on sloppy messaging out of the Trump White House only 8 days in, which is an issue, and people are going to jump on that. I was hoping that what's her name, Susie Wiles, who's his new chief of staff, she'd be on this a little bit better and kind of keep it under control a little bit more. Um, yeah, this was really out of left field, and again, I just find it completely ironic that there's people who are cheering this on, believing it actually happened, or when they believed it actually happened, who were cheering on the use of military to do domestic things, which is a Latin term, posse comitatus, which is basically like you can't use the military to do domestic policies unless it's authorized. So like this is something they're trying to do with like the invade or like the Alien Act or something. Um, that they can use the military for domestic purposes or to do law enforcement. So it just sets a bad precedent in my mind. I'm sorry. You can't be someone who talks about the Constitution all the time and then cheer on something like this, which is not legal. It shouldn't be done by the executive branch to use the military to just do whatever they need to do. Our country was not founded on the military just doing whatever it needs to do within our borders. So
It was
I'm
also
sorry.
not founded on the presidents having as much control as they've given over
Yeah,
over the years.
yeah. Um, Agreed. And it's just an expansion of the federal government, which should terrify a lot of people. It didn't happen. I know it didn't happen. So point to that. But people who are cheering this on because it's their team, it kind of weakens your own argument about whether or not you really believe in the Constitution of the United States and liberty and federalism and anything like that. So that's my point.
Mhm.
Say no to King Trump.